Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. The Derry Board of Tourism held a press conference today to deliver some devastating news. With another reported death, hedge mazes have officially become the deadliest maze in the country. This pushes our own labyrinth-like sewers to the number 2 position, with corn mazes close behind. Tall grass mazes still firmly hold the 4th position. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hello, everyone.
And Benjamin Graham.
What's up, constant readers?
And today we are covering the film The Shining, and we have CM leading our discussion. CM, take it away.
Thanks, Josh. The 1980 film The Shining, directed by, why am I even talking about any of this? Everybody knows who directed it, who is in it. So I say we just dive right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, we start a little differently. We are on a very scenic road trip.
It's a very serene way to open the film. I like it a lot.
I'm gonna find it hard to talk about this movie because it is very difficult to be so vocally wrong about something for so long.
Wow.
We've mentioned, we talked about this in the previous episodes, that I watched this movie for the first time in high school immediately after finishing the book, and I hated it because of the things that it's lacking from the book. And it did not take long into this viewing, my first viewing in 15 years, to be like, oh, what a dumb take. Like, I was just objectively wrong. This movie is amazing. From the get-go, just, the visuals of the flyover, the isolation,
The sound,
throughout the entire movie, all of the sound is perfect.
I think, so this is a conversation we've had off mic, but I'd like to bring it on mic because the both of you told me something very interesting talking about this. This adaptation is much like the Running Man adaptation.
That's a wild thing to say. But you know what movies are really similar? On The Shining and The Running Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger.
On the level of faithful adaptation, I'm willing to say that. But you both had mentioned to me about the movie and book versions of Annihilation, that they are fundamentally different. And Ben, I believe you explained, you shared the reason with me why the movie is so different.
For Annihilation.
Spoilers for Annihilation.
Spoilers
probably.
for the movie and possibly book Annihilation is... The reason is that Alex Garland, the guy that made the movie, when he read the book and was like, I really want to adapt this. And then years later, he got the rights and got hired to adapt it. And when he sat down to write the script, he did not reread the book.
But that was a conscious choice.
Yes, as a choice. He was like, no, I'm going to make the movie of my impression of the book. Which for that movie is really cool because like the whole theme of the book is like adaptation and like change and things being just a little off, but recognizable, and it works. And I feel the same way about this movie. It's not an adaptation of the book exactly. It is an adaptation of the themes and the feeling of the book.
Yeah.
And that is, I'm really glad that I watched the movie and I got what you guys are talking about because it put this movie into perspective for me in a very new way that really made me appreciate this more than I had the first time.
There are so many points, and I'm going to bring them up, but there are so many points that are not direct adaptations from the book. But when I saw them, it immediately made me think of scenes from the book that are not in the movie.
It's in the spirit of.
It's the feeling, the like dread and the isolation, like I said, the feeling of being lost is so good.
The problem is that I know we're getting like just very overarching, heavily got into this, but it is the fact that where the problem still lies for me is that, yes, this is very much a telling of how scary and that dreaded feeling, but I also don't care about a single character because
I have very different feelings.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Well, you know who I care about?
Tell me.
Get this car back on the road. I care about Stuart Ullman.
Okay, I had the same thought.
He was kind of more the guy Ben and I think, imagined when we read the book. He was just a fine dude, just doing his job, and the conversation went much differently. We don't have to talk specific details because we've already covered the book, but just this first section, the interviews, this movie has title cards, of course we all know that. What did you guys think of how we meet Ullman, how we meet Jack, how we are introduced to the Overlook and the information we are given about it and how it was given?
I would argue to say we get through this whole scene and still aren't introduced to Jack.
Right?
We need to not break it down like scene by scene.
Right.
I'll be here all night.
Chunks, because it starts with this interview and Ullman is just a dude. He's like you don't even get a hint of like assholery. He's just doing his job. But and we get Jack, who is all smiles and like is still very Jack Nicholson about everything. The man can't help his face. But he like just from the things he's saying and the way he's acting, we're like, oh, he's just an everyman. What kills it is that the scenes we get with Wendy and Danny interspersed with this first interview give us the like something's not right here.
Yeah, they give you a really spooky feeling because as Jack is talking to Ullman, we are with Wendy and Danny, and we'll talk about how Tony comes through in just a second, but first, just to set up the scene. Wendy and Danny are at home, and she's talking to him, and he's telling her, Tony's telling her that Jack got the job, and he's going to be calling soon to let her know. And that happens, and it's just a cool way in the movie version to kind of show us what Danny's all about.
I love this kid. This kid does such a good job. I wanted to know your opinion, Josh. The man who notoriously hates children. Children actors.
For the first chunk of it, I hated him, and then I warmed up to him. When he starts being scared all the time is really when I like his scared acting. Scared acting is a very difficult thing to pull off correctly, and those moments are very believable.
There's a reason for that. Stanley Kubrick is a piece of shit.
Did he do something to the kid too? I know he tortured.
No, I don't think so. I think he saved all of that for Wendy.
Shelley Duvall.
Yeah, Shelley Duvall. Okay, now, sorry, sidetrack. We must explain. I think everybody knows, but as we're gushing about this movie, I do want to acknowledge that Shelley Duvall's performance initially picked apart, like the whole movie. This wasn't really widely well received, and then that changed. And so did the perception of her performance, because she got Worst Actress.
Yeah, and then that's insane. That's insane.
Well, Razzies are garbage anyway. Those are... They're a stupid thing.
But that was out there. And then that was rescinded because people found out how Stanley Kubrick treated her, which was awful. So it's really a horrible way to feel about the movie, but it's so many layers deep because we think we're watching Jack abuse her, and it's this actress being abused by this director.
It's crazy to me that anyone ever said this was a bad performance, because this is literally one of the most insanely powerful performances I've ever seen in a horror movie. It's just the reason for it makes the movie a considerably more difficult watch.
Yes. And she had initially, in interviews and stuff, talked about what happened as he got what he needed to get from me to get a good performance. And then I think years later, she just finally found the courage to say, oh no, actually that was
I was just being abused.
Yeah. Like he was a shitty director for not knowing how to direct his actors or
actresses specifically. Yeah.
So anyway, also reflecting on her performance, I think a lot of the criticism too, in comparing it to the book, is that she's just this weak, sniveling, whining character. I don't see her that way.
Oh, not
I
at
see
all.
her. No, she is terrified the whole time and just trying to make it through. And I don't see that as her just being wimpy and whiny. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yes, she is crying and clearly just like
on the verge of a breakdown.
Herself.
Yeah.
But just the fact
that doesn't make you weak.
No, not at all. I think I don't know. I think Shelley Duvall's performance is just absolutely mind-blowing. And I don't know. Wendy Torrance is just like such a fucking strong, amazing character in the book, as you know, I can't help bring that with. And
that could be part of it too.
But I don't know. It's I don't know. It's all very hard to talk about. God bless Shelley Duvall.
Yeah.
I wish every good thing on her.
In the, the big scene with the bat, the whole time I was thinking how much my heart is breaking for her because of what I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That probably influences.
Yeah, it definitely changes things a little bit.
Well, you see this person, it's like these layers of this person playing a person too, but both of them being strong and as strong as they can be under the circumstances. Her first real scene killed me with so Danny has like the seizure that we get later. He falls in the bathroom or something. And this is still ongoing as Jack is having his interview. We are cutting to the doctor at the home, checking him out. She's, alluding to seizures, and they take their conversation into the living room to talk about Tony and when that all started. And you watch Wendy kind of talk around it and then finally get to it. And let's just talk about the reaction to this, everything in this moment that kind of made it like really horribly uncomfortable. Well, and right before that, sorry, we should also say the scares in it are quiet and horrifying. Because when Danny has this moment, we cut to a shot of the elevator with the blood, that very iconic scene.
Yes.
And just the sound bed that exists in this moment. And then we cut to Danny's face and he's like silently screaming, and we get a flash of the twins. And it's nothing like, it isn't these musical stings. It's just so perfect.
Yeah. And when we get back to Wendy, she's talking to this doctor, and it's kind of become a meme recently.
Yes.
Wendy's cigarette.
The ash, yeah.
Oh,
it's cutting back and forth. Wendy lights a cigarette and she's holding it, and it's cutting back and forth between her and the doctor. The doctor's asking questions about when Tony showed up. Tony, of course, being the little boy that lives in Danny's mouth.
Like we all have.
Crazy. What do you guys think about that?
Terrifying.
Stupid. Dumb. The dumbest thing.
It is such a little kid thing.
Oh, I can definitely see it.
And such a creepy thing for a kid to say completely earnestly. I thought it was amazing. I was like, oh, that's really unsettling that he conceptualizes.
Or do you hate it because it's not the book?
No, it's because kind of. It's not Danny. Like we Ben, you specifically defended Danny's not a creepy kid. This kid's creepy. Like we don't get any of like the precocious kid full of life and any happiness.
He is very.
There's none of that.
The thing I took it as, and I hope this isn't a problematic thing to say, he's very autistic coded.
Interesting.
He is very flat and affectless in his delivery, and he very rarely makes eye contact with his parents. There are several scenes where he will just stare blankly ahead. And that's kind of how it's just this kid he has this shining because, it's a trope in King, you know, that autism is often kind of paired with
superpowers or magic or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's atypical. It lets you access something else.
Yeah, not kind saying that is a good trope or bad, but that is the way that I viewed it. Which kind of makes sense because I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that Kubrick was on the spectrum. That might be completely false, but
I don't know.
Anyway, but yeah, I thought Danny's
It was definitely different than the book.
Yes. Anyway, what was I talking about? How you doing?
We were talking about the doctor scene.
Oh, yeah. The doctor they're talking about when Tony showed up and Wendy starts smoking the cigarette.
She's her hand is shaking, lighting it. She's already shaking.
That's amazing.
And she says, it was when he first went to school and he got hurt and, whatever. And then the doctor asks, how did he get hurt? And it cuts back to Wendy and the ash on her cigarette has extended a solid halfway down the cigarette.
Yeah.
It is a comically large ash. And it just shows that immediate jump in like tenseness. Like she hates this question so much. She smoked half of a cigarette in one drag.
Or she's just been sitting there.
God.
Like it was a time jump.
That is a theory that's out there. There's a YouTube video
I didn't know that was a theory.
Yeah. There's a whole video that breaks down the movie from the perspective that the entire movie is Wendy's madness.
I hate that.
It plays pretty strong.
Nah, I fucking hate that so much. I hate that.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, Ben.
I hate that they're like, hey, this movie about toxic masculinity, what if it was the woman's problem? I fucking hate that.
Is this movie about toxic masculinity?
I want you to sit with that question for a second, bud, and think about how everything Jack does is because he is the man of the house and his responsibility is to take care of his family, even if it means murdering them.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like as the person leading this episode, do I do something?
Oh, no, I'm just saying. I'm just saying, yeah.
I guess this movie is great and crazy, but because there is so much and you are essentially overstimulated with all of the detail to notice.
Yes.
So much of this movie turns one note for me in sections about the characters. So I don't attribute anything Jack does to toxic masculinity. I attribute everything to that level of fear and madness that Kubrick wanted to set. This movie's formulaic to me. This movie is extrapolated pieces of tension and horror.
Yeah, but all
together.
of those things happen for a reason. Like
I guess I don't feel that it establishes the reasons via just the film.
Okay.
As opposed to how we can trace back all of that in the book, all of the toxic masculinity, the generational abuse. We get all that from the details we pull from the book, taking this movie just as what it is, because these characters in this movie are not the characters from the book. We can pretty much divorce all of that immediately because it's just Jack Nicholson, this Jack Torrance. You don't know anything about him, really. Nothing about his past, nothing about why he is the way he is, nothing that informs these things. And because by the third scene with his family, he already hates them, it just seems like all of Jack Torrance's motivation is madness. That's the one note that I'm referring to that it comes off for me.
I understand what you're saying. He's distilled these elements in each of these characters, and those are the primary focus of the film to create is the specific atmosphere that it has of just tension and creepiness and strife. I feel like that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
I agree with
that.
But
Fucking works. It works
and I
hard.
like it. Yeah, I think it. I understand what he did. Well, I mean, who knows if I do, but in that any of those moments, there was always something about them, something in there that told me more about the character that I know from the book. And I think you have to have those two pieces together to really get that full picture, which is weird because it's like almost like a super fan adaptation. It's like, well, I don't need to tell you. It's all here. I'm going to give you this visual journey that is slightly, Ben, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just so excited because, I agree completely. It's the same thing what we were just talking about. This is one of those movies where the book is not better than the movie is not better than the book. They complement each other if you take them together. Like we say, this is an adaptation. We're going to try and take it just as a movie. But I'm sorry, you can't consume any media in a vacuum.
Right.
We, in this, if we had
Except for The Running Man.
Except for The Running Man, which is perfect.
Okay, I'm sorry.
How many zones does this movie have? 1 at most. But fuck, what was I saying? God damn it, I can't.
You take this, you can't.
You can't take anything in a vacuum. And if I wish I could have seen this movie before I read the book. I do. Because I would love to know what I thought about the movie without the context of the book. But we here at the table have the context, and that informs, at least for me, it informed a lot of my reading of the themes of the movie.
Yes. I saw so many things that someone who loved this book put in the movie.
Yes.
He didn't make them overt. So the thing, Ben, when you said you wish you had seen it first so you could know what that interpretation would be. We were sitting there when it came to the first Lloyd scene specifically. I turned to you guys. I was like, holy fucking shit. The way the shot is set up, because Jack comes in the gold room, jumping way ahead, sits down at the bar. Good. There's nothing in there. He turns on the light. He's just got his face in his hands. He's so put out, and he's like, oh, I wish I had a beer. And then you're facing him all of a sudden. He's looking directly into the camera, pulls his hands down, smiles at you.
So awesome.
And then he's like, hey, Lloyd. And it cuts to Lloyd. And we know what all of this means because we've read the book. And I'm just like, God, I wish I could see this, not knowing that, because I want to know what I would have made of this.
Because it's otherworldly, it's sudden and unexplained.
You saw the movie before you read the book.
Oh my God, I did. This is the only book. You guys, I can't not
you
understand that I haven't read this book before we covered it.
It's okay, CM.
I don't know why.
You've always read this book.
Oh my God, I'm Jack.
Oh no! To be fair,
my brain is the overlook.
I also saw it before I read it, and it does feel like I've never seen it before.
Okay, thank you.
it just because going into it the very first time I watched it, which, as I've discussed on the show, was probably at least 2 decades ago. Hey,
I want to cut that out.
No, it's so good.
It stays forever.
Jesus Christ. Listeners, I am humiliated. I just need you to know that. Okay, we're talking about the doctor's.
Are we still there?
Never.
My God, it's so late, listeners. We don't record this late usually.
I'm so sorry.
If I was in the middle of making a point and did not ever reach it, I don't know what to tell you.
I'm going to wrap up the
Josh.
point. The point is that when Wendy finally does tell the story of how Danny's arm was broke, she does it in such a apologetic, excusing way about what Jack did. Mm-hmm. And she gets through telling the story, and it cuts back to the doctor, who looks quietly horrified. Mm-hmm. And then the world moves on.
Yeah, she doesn't say a word. And it holds on her for so long. Sorry, we got interrupted from that powerful moment by like 10 other powerful moments. And I have to figure out that. Okay.
I told you, this is going to be a fucking hard one to talk about because it's so chock full of unbelievably good imagery, acting, everything.
Okay, let's talk. We are at the hotel. It's freaking gorgeous. There are references to it being built on an Indian burial ground. There are a lot of Native American references throughout this film. We're not even probably going to get into it. That's a whole
it's
other
never
thing.
Pointed out. It's one of those things.
There are theories.
If you go watch the documentary Room 237, and it goes into all of the absolutely bonkers theory crafting that people have done about this movie,
Yeah.
which also makes this hard to talk about because
I know.
I feel like a complete dumbass as opposed to the people that research this movie. Like,
yeah. So a cool thing, we're going to get more about like just the way this hotel is set up, which is a very House of Leaves for us. But Danny is in the playroom. And this is kind of our first, I would say, real scare.
Yeah.
And Ben, I loved what you said at the end of this scene.
Yeah, because he's playing darts poorly. This kid sucks.
I was like, he's doing great. He plays better than I do.
He hit the board at least. That's a good
It's
point.
so much higher than him.
But he turns, and there in front of him are two little girls in creepy blue dresses, and they just stare at him.
But he doesn't just happen to turn. He stops, and it holds on him, and it does it long enough that you understand that he is sensing something and feeling something, and then he just slowly turns.
And it's just this moment where he stares. There's this like kind of medium wide shot of these two little girls standing in this empty room, and they stare at him, and then they turn and they walk away. And I turned to you guys and said, how did he find a scary way for two little girls to leave a room?
It's the little smile they share before they turn and walk away that got me.
For me, it's the fact that they keep holding hands.
That is very creepy.
It's just unnatural.
Do you think they're holding hands because they're scared of each other? Like they're creeping each other out? But they're all they have?
That's like great theory.
Thanks. All right. We get a lot of dialogue right out of the book, too, especially when we meet Dick.
That's one thing at the beginning of the movie. There is a lot of exposition dumps that I had not realized how much information needs to get out for a premise that is basically there are ghosts in this hotel.
And when Dick shows Wendy the pantry, Wendy and Danny,
that music
the
sting.
Music tells us something bad is going to happen with this pantry later.
It's so fucking genius.
We have to just the music in general.
It's not music.
It does.
The sound of the movie.
Yes. It pulls its fucking weight.
It does.
There are so many scenes that are just long shots of people walking down a hallway that are instantly incredibly effective just because there is a band going insane on the soundtrack.
It's the one in the pantry got me so badly. One, because I think it's the first one we get that's so jarring, but it really is such a dynamic tone shift because it's such a leisurely pace that Dick is walking
a normal
them through.
Conversation.
It's all completely normal, and this music is just the music makes you take in every detail of the room because your brain is thinking something's happening right now, and I need to be aware.
So, Josh, question for you, because you're not into the film's interpretation of Danny's power. What did you think of when we saw, because we've seen The Shine too, and it was him kind of having those visuals and looking terrified and doing a great job looking terrified. What did you think of when Dick started talking to him while he was talking to Wendy?
I love that. I thought that was great. Nice and smooth way to drop it in, and it shows how second nature it is for Dick.
Yeah, it looked effortless, and I was like, because in the book you don't think about it because you're not seeing it. You're like, he's talking, and talking,
right? Just to carry on two full conversations at once.
I can barely carry on one full conversation.
Same, big same.
Everyone's heard this episode so far. None of us can.
We get the warning about room 237, not 217. Call it what you want, though. It'll be fine either way. And then just because if we get confused
I think back because I don't know if this is true or not, but it's so funny that it's such a dumb reason. The reason that I heard for the number change was because they didn't want people to not want to stay in that room at the actual hotel. So they made it a room that doesn't exist at that hotel.
They didn't understand horror movies.
Yeah.
They didn't understand that they just sell the fuck out of that room.
I was like, of all the things Kubrick did, that's what a weird choice for him to be considerate there.
Oh, speaking of like cool elements that he put into a film that everybody thinks he didn't read the book for, Jack is wearing a Stovington t-shirt.
Oh, God, that made me so happy. What a little amazing Easter egg.
So we were with the family. It's a month later, and Jack and Wendy are having a conversation. She's brought him back for breakfast. And I just want to mention this because it was very scary. They're kind of having that conversation of, okay, we've been here a month. How are things going? Checking in with each other. And he tells her, I've never been happier than I am here. And I feel like, the moment I walked in for my interview, I felt like I had been here before. What did you guys think of that moment and how it relates to the book? Does it work for you?
This is a point that I made a note that basically from this point on, nearly every line of Jack Nicholson's could end with, "You stupid bitch," and it would all fit. Like, that's the tone that he keeps from this moment on. And to hear...
Very, condescending.
Yeah. And to hear him talk about how well he fits into this place... the words he's saying are very happy. The tone that he is speaking to his wife is not. And it is very jarring and cool.
Yeah, Jack from the jump is a bastard. I think I understand what you mean, Josh, when you say you don't care about, but having a protagonist that is a bad person is still interesting, And I don't know. I think there is... If I understand correctly, the way you feel is that there is not enough of a shift between early movie Jack and the end. Is that kind of your complaint?
More or less.
I disagree with that.
I mean, there's a sharp shift.
Yeah.
Not saying there isn't a shift.
It's not a shift from a guy you can like
to be
to
a character
guy.
that you like.
I don't even necessarily have to like him. I just want to be able to root for this troubled person. And that's what the book gives me, is those times where I can root for Jack a little bit, even though I know he's not going to turn it around. I can hope. Whereas this, there's no moment that I could see being empathetic towards Jack.
I am so happy that I had the reaction I did to Annie Wilkes, because
you really walked so I could run.
Hearing you talk about this, if I hadn't had that response to her character, and especially the film version, I would be so concerned. Which is probably how you guys felt listening to me, so I am sorry.
Listen back, you'll hear it.
Yeah, I get it now. I understand what you're saying, and I don't think the movie would have suffered having more of a kind of normal person, but I'm fine with it either way, I guess.
What I will be very interested in is when we watch the miniseries, because I feel that is the interpretation of the character I wanted to see. So I will be really excited to watch it with you guys when we cover it later for Patreon, to see if that helps you guys relate to where I'm at with this character.
Okay, I think I just figured out. I just formulated the thought that I think that this actually is a lot closer to book Jack than we think, because how much of that empathy is Jack's manipulation. It's his self. I am empathetic towards him, but so much. You can only be empathetic for so long if someone is unwilling or unable to change. Mm-hmm. If someone doesn't put in the work, and in this movie, we don't see his inner monologue of how much he hates himself.
True.
So we don't get that, aw, this poor guy. He's sad that he's a monster.
He's thinking about trying.
Yeah, he's thinking about trying. But I think if we saw, without any of the inner mind workings of Jack Torrance, what we get on the page in the book, pretty close to the Jack Torrance we see on the book.
I would agree with you more, because I'm on board. If we had one or two positive Jack Wendy scenes, like we get in the book, that we get the glimpse, because those are also without internal monologue, when we get glimpses of who Jack was before he started this downward spiral completely and didn't get therapy.
Ben, you're right. Josh, you're right. Well, what you just said made me think specifically. I made a note when we're in the car going, it's at on their way to. Is
that as far as we are in the movie?
No.
Because I believe it.
I'm going back a minute. When the whole family is on the way to stay at the Overlook, and Danny's kind of crouched towards the front seat. He's in the back, and you have the three of them in the shot. And my note was, Jack Nicholson seems like he didn't want or ask for this kid to be in the back of his car. He doesn't seem like he's with them.
Yeah.
Like they are important to him.
The first time he smiles in the presence of his family is when explaining the Donner Party to his 5-year-old kid.
Yeah.
He gains joy explaining the idea of cannibalism to a kid.
And celebrating that his kid already knows it. Because of TV.
Also, we need to mention, because it's very important, rather than the hedge animals, we have the hedge mage. Thoughts?
It is responsible for my favorite moment in the entire movie. There is, we're introduced to the hedge maze. And, watching it this time, I was like, it makes sense that they removed the hedge animals. It's 1980. How the fuck? So it would have looked really fucking
Would have been stop
lame.
motion.
Yeah,
which wouldn't have fit with this movie.
It
would be
not
cool.
been. So they have this really awesome hedge maze. And there is a scene that it's been a month. Jack is an asshole, and he is in the hotel bouncing a ball off the walls when he should be writing.
From the perspective of his writing chair with his typewriter in the forefront.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, after
Such a
telling
beautiful shot.
Wendy, I have to write. This is very important that I'm working.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's fucking around with this ball, and he's kind of wandering around this lobby or the Colorado Lounge or wherever he is. Because it is impossible to tell where anyone is at any point in this movie almost.
Intentionally.
Intentionally. It's amazing. But he kind of wanders, he throws the ball away and he wanders off, and there is a small scale model of the hedge maze. Right before this, we have seen Wendy and Danny head into the hedge maze, and there is this unbelievably cool shot where it cuts from Jack looking down at the hedge maze to a unreally distant helicopter shot above the hedge maze with Danny and Wendy walking in the center of it.
It's the playhouse scene. He's the giant.
See, what it made me think of, that I love that, but for me, it was the scene in the book when the snow starts. That line that we read out loud in episode 2, all I could think was they are as small as microbes in the belly of a monster. That is what I was talking about when I'm like, this is not in the book, but it so perfectly captures the mood and the feeling that these characters are going through in the book.
You know what you just made me think of? I hope this makes sense. Buckle up.
I'm ready.
Okay.
These are my favorite CM movies.
You describing that way made me feel like, and kind of going back to our previous conversation of things he incorporated, that you have to read the book to really make those connections. The atmosphere that the music creates, the sound bed and all of that, that is, for me, the cinematic adaptation of all of the stuff we get in the boiler room with the creepy poem and him looking through the book and the scrapbook and the hotel history. That takes up that space in my head for this spooky element. Did that make sense?
No, I love that.
Yeah, that's fucking wild. That's amazing.
That kicks ass.
I just think the sound bed, this is going to be a weird way to describe it, but I realized watching this 2.5-hour movie, I could not physically get comfortable.
Right.
Because of the atmosphere, and I think partially the sound bed is to, I guess,
fucking
reward
oppressive.
that too.
Yeah.
Because I could not relax this whole movie.
And even when it kind of goes, not disappears, but backs off and you're not really hearing anything, that atmosphere is maintained. Like you can't, it's not a movie you want to pause. Like I was hungry and I'm like, I can't. I just won't eat dinner tonight.
With an hour left, we're like, should we order food? And then I was like, no, let's go.
Yeah.
The idea that because the sound bed is so crazy, the silence is also a different kind of eerie sound bed. Is just, again, I could not be comfortable the whole time.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Can I just take a second to Google whether sound bed is a term? Is that a real thing? You're the audio engineer, CM. You should know.
Yeah, so I said sound bed because I'm talking about I am talking about the, not just the score, like the musical aspects, but there are also elements that I don't think are, like, if you got the score on an album for a movie, it's usually song type things. And sometimes it'll include
the
like
incidental
loops
music,
and other sound effects and stuff too, depending on what kind of thing it is. Usually they do that for video games. So I just use the term sound bed because that's like Foley.
I just never heard the term, and it does fit. I
hope it's a real term. I assumed it was. Okay. You know what?
After watching this movie, of post-production have taught me plenty about
after watching this movie and forgetting that I hadn't read the book first, you could tell me I don't know anything and I would believe you. Let's jump into room 217 because Danny sure does.
What room?
237. See, that's why I said earlier. Disclaimer, we will call it 2 something.
For sure.
It's such a great moment because much like the book, we don't see what happens. This scene, it is put on the end of Jack waking up from a horrifying dream where he chopped up his family.
And he tells Wendy all about this.
He tells it in
and I guess to
every
his credit,
detail
he's
he wants.
crying about it.
Sure. There was a moment while he was crying that I thought he like half looked to be like, "You buying this? All right."
Oh God.
There's just like a slight moment, and I
That's
really
just Jack
believed
Nicholson's
it.
face.
It might be, yeah. But so this big emotional moment is happening, and Wendy's holding him, and he's sobbing, and Danny walks in, and you just see him from behind, and you can see his shirt's like torn or messed up a little bit, and Wendy's like, "Everything's fine, don't worry about it." He doesn't respond. He just keeps walking closer, and the camera's moving in with him, and it gets a few everything's okay before Wendy actually takes in what she's seeing and then runs over to Danny. And when you see it, man, his neck is gross looking, his shirt's all torn up, and then Wendy shifts gears and immediately, "You did this to him," scoops him up, leaving to my favorite Jack Nicholson moment as he's like holding his head like, "What the fuck just happened?"
His facial expression in this scene, I can't even describe.
Jack Nicholson, the whole movie is unbelievable.
Insane.
Unbelievable. The face acting this man can do is unreal.
Can I tell on you guys?
Yeah.
Josh and Ben
Okay.
declared that Jack Nicholson is a very sexy man.
Okay, so we're CM. Let me defend my position. Because CM, you brought up that you had thought that he had been voted sexiest man alive, which to my research
it must have been Playgirl or something. It was something. He was, yeah.
But he was considered like a sex symbol, right? And I was like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, same.
As the movie went on, I was like, okay, not this Jack Nicholson, but Chinatown Jack Nicholson.
Well, there were hints of him.
Yeah.
In it. Yeah.
I totally get it.
CM came on board at probably the worst moment she could come on board.
You're telling on us.
Yeah.
You turned to us during the staircase scene and are like, you know what? I think you guys might be right.
I thought you guys would respect girl power too much to round me out on that. But yeah, when Jack was, listeners, just support me and love me. When Jack was coming at Wendy with the bat, it was just the way he was like delivering his lines is very intense.
Oh yeah,
very erotic. Not that he was going to hurt her. That I saw you look at me when you did a head thing. don't head tilt me like that. No, he. Anyway. Josh was like, "Oh, is he giving you George Stark vibes?" It's like, fuck.
Where were we?
The ash on the cigarette is very important.
Okay, so Ben, as you said, Wendy yells at Jack. She runs off with Danny, grabs a butcher knife on her way through the kitchen, I think.
Not yet.
No,
okay.
Because that's not until after she locks him in the storage room.
Oh, this is when Jack goes to the bar. We already talked about that, except I want to read the line he delivers because it made me feel like when we read the book and there was like a line that we're like, oh my God, holy shit, somebody wrote this line and it's perfect. Before he's toasting to Lloyd, before he takes his first sip, he says, "Here's to 5 miserable months on the wagon and all the irreparable harm it caused me."
Yikes.
That says so much. we get a lot of the Jack proclaiming, like, I would never hurt Danny. I'd never lay my hands on that little bastard. I love the little shit. And
it's so powerful because he's denying I would ever hurt him.
And then he does the thing he does in the book. Well, I hurt him once. So it wasn't as powerful, but it had that element he's pulling through.
It's just as good in the different way that he breaks it down, the way he minimizes it with it was just too much. Like, it was just a microscopic piece of pressure.
There's no sympathy in the movie when you don't feel his self-loathing. You feel his arrogance. That's what it is. There's self-loathing we get in the book, arrogance.
His denial. It's very powerful.
Wendy comes to Jack, and it's like we cut from him with the drink, and the bar is fully stocked, and Lloyd is there. And when she walks in, it's like we saw him initially. There's nothing there. So cool. And she says, Danny told me what happened. There's a crazy woman. She's extremely like upset and freaked out. And Jack's like, all right, I'll go look, in the most unsupportive tone imaginable.
So before we get into him going, and this is very nitpicky, obviously, but one of the things that I don't like being taken away from the characters is that in the book, it is time and time again, Danny is a daddy's boy. The way Jack and Danny are together is something that Wendy is jealous of. Yeah. And, the times when they talk, Danny doesn't look like he looks like he doesn't feel safe with his dad. But one of the biggest moments about this is the turning the tables on Wendy, because Danny says she did it. And then for that split second, and he gets to turn it back on Wendy. Oh, you think I did this. He just said you did this. We don't get that.
Except we don't need it because he blames her regardless.
Jack is his dad. Movie Jack is his dad.
Yeah.
That's pretty succinct.
Yeah. Because his relationship to his father is not mentioned at all.
Right. And Danny and Jack's relationship is, as I had that thought, because I was like, yeah, we don't have any of that, which I would love. That's not this kind of movie. And it made me realize, what Jack Nicholson's Jack is more like the kind of stereotypical father figure of maybe a couple decades before that, like maybe 50s-ish. And then that is like, like his dad would have been. That's kind of more the relationship we see.
Yeah, Danny is very obviously much more scared of Jack from the beginning. Yeah, I would say.
All right, Jack has to go look in room 237.
Good. And it's unnerving.
It's so unnerving because it is preceded by this like beautiful creepy but beautiful walkthrough of just this insanely decorated, colorful room, and the camera movement, which was something that was new at the time. Oh my God, I'm an idiot. I can't remember the mechanism, but that was
steady cam shots.
Yeah, steady cam. That makes sense. That was really one of the first times this was done in a film. So all of those sort of rolling shots in and out of things, people hadn't really seen something like that before. And even though we have a lot since then, it still got me.
Oh, nobody's done it better.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's just the slow pace. It takes its time, and it is 100% confident that you are taking in everything you're seeing, even though you're not seeing anything yet. It's the build-up, which usually is more terrifying than the moment, but in this film, it's not. It's just more terrifying piled on top.
I've never been more scared of a naked woman standing still. I mean, I am such a fan of long shots, of long takes.
You're going to say nudity.
Also, not enough Grady titters. I wanted to go back to the So this filled the titter hole in my heart.
Jesus.
It is so spooky to watch this woman. There's no dialogue. It's just leaning over, getting out of the tub.
She could have come out of that tub so many different ways.
Yeah, and she looks 9 feet tall when she gets out of it, based on like how they set up the room.
You would have to climb her if you wanted to get it on.
And then the way she walks, like she still feels like she's larger than life as she gets towards the...
She swims to him.
Yes. And then when Jack comes in, you're like, oh, she's the size of a normal person. This isn't scary. But it's still just... What I said to you guys after that was, imagine how many times they had to do that take, because it's just one long... Oh, God, it's amazing, and it's horrifying, and it's tense.
And all of the...
And it hasn't even been scary yet.
No, and even when it gets scary, there's so many subtle changes leading up to that, because Jack doesn't say anything. He's just given her looks that he cycles through a few different ones, and they're just they all say so much, and I could not describe a single one. and he embraces her, and they're kissing, and you're kind of close up on them, and then it seems like all of a sudden you notice, wait a minute,
That's
it must
not
have
the
happened
same woman.
when they cut to her. Yes, her hair, you can see a little gray, and just the facial features are not quite as firm. And then, of course, it cuts to the mirror, and she looks like what a corpse would look like if it had been decomposing in a bathtub.
The makeup is sick.
And seeing it like crystal clear, normally that ruins it.
It does
The
not.
makeup is
at all.
really actually sick. It made me feel sick for a second.
And the fact, so many modern movies like just will not linger on a monster. And they make sure you see every fucking bit of that makeup, because it just lingers and cuts back and forth between her looming after Jack as he stumbles backwards out of the room and her lying dead in the bathtub and slowly coming out dripping wet. It's so fucking scary.
And for a minute I couldn't tell, because I was like, oh, we're seeing now what happened to Danny.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and Danny and Dick are shining at that moment. So I was like, are we just seeing what happened to Danny, or is Danny showing Dick what happened to him?
We didn't even talk about, because it cuts to, while this is all happening, it cuts to Danny, and he's sitting up in bed and drooling and shaking. And same thing with, it's where we see Dick Halloran's titty posters.
It was right before that. Yeah, we got to break the scene down. Before kind of some of the stuff we've talked about with Jack having this experience in there, because as we said, we're cutting back and forth. We are in Florida, and Dick is in bed watching the news, and the news is somehow talking about both Florida and Colorado, because that's, I'm sure, what all Florida news reports on, those two areas. And we pan out, and we see this naked painting of this beautiful black woman behind him. And we're like...
First we see it over the TV.
Oh, yeah. And then it pans to him. He's like on opposite ends, just surrounded. It was really cool setup.
Great.
It says so much about Dick Halloran.
He can get fucked whenever he wants.
Exactly. That's the other complaint I have that we'll get to, is that Dick Halloran is completely misused, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Danny is catatonic, basically, and Wendy's trying to talk to him, and this is when we get, I think this is a very iconic line. Would one of you like to talk about it?
Yeah, because Danny is in his full catatonic state, Tony, the little boy in his mouth, decides to take over the conversation, and in his very creepy voice says, "Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance." And it's so unnerving. This kid, man.
He does such a great job.
Yeah. The way this kid does the Tony voice could be very silly.
Yeah.
But it's
not. You would, if I was sitting here doing it, it would be very silly. But the honesty and the full blank slate that Danny goes in when he speaks as Tony, even in the beginning, he's having a conversation with Tony by himself, and you see him differently.
Yeah, he does a good job.
It's wild.
Yeah. As all of this is happening too, we have scenes cutting back and forth between Jack taking apart the CB radio, and Dick, trying to get people to call and check on him and getting a flight and kind of making all of these moves because they can't be reached. And so I just want to mention that in case we get too lost in some other detail from one random scene.
How could that happen? Give me 4 examples from this episode.
This is where Wendy is coming back to check on Jack, and he's not at his typewriter, but she sure is.
We never address this.
What?
The giant fucking book next to his typewriter.
Is that supposed to be?
It looks like the scrapbook. Because when the one time you see close-ups of it, it is newspaper clippings. Mm-hmm. But
I didn't even connect that.
And I don't think we see it again. It's in
it's never
one
mentioned.
Scene.
Never mentioned. But every time you see the table, it's out on the table.
Again, something someone who's a fan of the book would put in there.
It's just such a weird detail. But with this adaptation, it's a waste.
Well,
it's a pointless.
I don't feel that way about because there are a lot of things like that, and for some reason they don't hit me that way, even though I would complain about them in something else as being fan service. And I think it's just because of the atmosphere of the movie itself. It doesn't stand out. It's not so wink and naughty. It's more, I'm doing this for me, and if you catch it, great, and if you don't, I don't care.
It's the same thing with the Stovington shirt.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing. They're like, oh, that could be that. And then that's pretty much all you need out of it.
Let's talk about what Wendy finds when she looks at the book the very long book that Jack has been writing.
Goddamn manuscript.
She finds a single piece of paper that says, "Feeling fine."
Oh my God. Yeah. So this reminded me, because, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Very iconic. Mm-hmm. If you Google it, you'll see photos of sheets of paper with that typed in it. What I had forgotten was the piece that she pulls out is full of typos, weird spacing. But then I'd completely forgotten that when she goes through the giant stack of, gotta be more than 200 pages, all of them, it's written in book format, but every sentence,
and quotations.
It's all that one phrase over and over and over and over. And it is
just such a cool piece of just production design.
God, it's so cool. Especially because back then someone fucking typed that.
Yeah. Do you think they're okay?
I hope they got that book published.
Okay, I would buy that.
I would.
I would buy that to just have a book on my shelf that said nothing.
A lot of people would buy that.
Because there were no duplicate pages. Each one of them was definitely unique. It was fucking great.
This next scene when Jack finds Wendy looking at his book, Shelley Duvall's performance here, and Jack Nicholson, this scene makes my eyes burn thinking about.
This is what I was talking about the at the beginning of the episode. This is an incredibly difficult scene to watch because of what we know about behind the scenes. But fuck, the performance that Shelley Duvall gives is, I mean, that both of them give, because Jack Nicholson is also so unbelievably scary in this moment in a really upsettingly real way.
Oh my God, he would have made a great Norman Daniels.
Oh, still time.
There is.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I do need to see an adaptation of Rose Matter in which Norman Daniels is 80 years old.
I mean, I'd still watch it.
It's a 70-year-old Rosie finding herself.
Finding herself.
Be a way different movie.
Yeah.
Oh. So they have this terrible exchange, and Wendy immediately, when she sees him, because she finds what he's actually been typing, and you can tell she's just trying to figure out how to play it cool, guys. Like, I'm not going to ask him what the shit is, what's wrong with him, what's going on. I think she ends up saying, I'm just confused. I want to go to my room.
I need to lay down and think.
My God, it's like she couldn't even think of what to say to him and was babbling almost like she was a child again.
And Jack doesn't let up a single thing that she says, does not take any of the bait or excuses. He presses on asking her questions to be more specific about the thing you just said. I don't think you believe that. And it gets so intense, and it's
super gaslighting.
I was just about to say that. It is exactly him saying, you need, because she's
it's
saying.
It's a master gas.
He is saying. So
Nailed
master
it.
Gaslighting. Because what is it? He's like, you have ideas about what we need to do about Danny, and I'd like to hear it because you're planning things behind my back. And her plan is we should get him to a doctor. And he takes that as do you hear the insane things that you're saying?
It's a very condensed version of a few chapters that we get in the book of these conversations. It's really cool. And horrible.
And but the end of it, is the fucking best.
I was going to say, the only cool part of this scene is...
how sexy he is. Oh, no.
No, yeah. She's backing up and they reach the top of the stairs and he's reaching for the bat and she's been swinging the bat at him. And finally he reaches and she smacks his hand away with the bat. And the look like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Look on Jack Nicholson's face of like, wait, that can't be. I just got hurt.
You hit me.
And he has this shocked look. And then she wails him across the forehead and he falls down a flight of stairs.
I'm surprised he's alive. The actor.
The stunt man that did that.
Holy shit.
Such a good job.
And then she drags him into the cupboard in a really tense scene.
Yeah.
Another out of the book moment.
He starts waking up way earlier than I thought he would.
Yeah. I like that they kept that her not unlocking it, freaking out. That was another small piece that I was like, God, I'm really glad because that tension's so great.
I think we accidentally skipped over it. We get the visit. Oh, no. Did we talk about Grady?
No,
okay.
But God, there is something I want to say about Grady.
Let's talk about Grady. We can talk about the first time he met him and this time, because this is where he comes back. Yeah. Go for it, Josh.
Grady bumps into him as he's leaving with his bourbon and
before the pantry stuff.
Before all
this
this
is the second
stuff.
Party scene.
Yes.
This is the scene where he's in the gold room and there's actually, it's full of people in tuxedos and ball gowns.
Yeah. And he gets a drink spilled on him, so Grady takes him to the bathroom to wet a cloth and clean him off. And they have this in the fucking most amazing bathroom. That bathroom set is so sharp, and I love it. They have this conversation. I looked it up on IMDb, and in the quotes, it says, for Jack's line, counts to 35 silently in his head. Don't I know you from somewhere? When he first
And all of the faces he makes as he's thinking about this. He made so many faces in that bathroom.
It's so cool because throughout the movie, he does such an amazing job of just saying nothing, but you know exactly what is going through his head. Specifically, Josh, the scene that you brought up where Danny is hurt and Wendy blames Jack and runs off. There are these two shots. It's her picking Danny up. You did this. Cut to Jack, and he has this look of just utter confusion. Like he completely does not understand. And you see it and you go, oh, I know exactly what he thought. Cut to Wendy. She runs off. Cut back. It's the same exact look, except he's furious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is silent. It is wordless. It is motionless. And it is completely readable, understandable. It's amazing. In this scene in the bathroom, he is doing the same thing, except his emotions are completely unreadable.
Yeah. There seems to be a lot of them that he goes through very quickly. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a moment that I could see a strong pull from the book that made me think of something in a whole new light that I'm very excited about. He's telling Grady, you were the caretaker. And he is very insistent, no matter how much Grady, to the insistence to the point that felt desperate. And I was trying to pull why, and I realized something, because if Jack is staying here and the last caretaker wound up a servant, what does that mean for him? And that's why he's so desperate to be like, no, I'm right about this. Like, because if I'm right about this, then that's the ominous thing that's the monster in the corner I don't want to look at. That's a possibility for me. And it just connected some roads that made me very excited about that scene.
Oh, we also get a diminishing of Dick's profession.
Yeah.
In the same scene where Jack is trying to grapple with the idea that he's going to be demoted as soon as he's...
Yeah. Now that's an interesting... Yeah, with Grady having been demoted by the hospital. By Kingdom Hospital. What are we watching? By the hotel. And then the hotel also having, because of its inherent evil racism, I guess, that a building is racist. Sure. That it says some unkind things about Dick, but also calls him the cook. At the beginning of the movie, Ullman introduces, and I noted this because it's different from we noted in the book, that he's called a cook. And he's like, and Wendy thinks, that's weird because it's such a nice place. Yeah. Why wouldn't he be the head chef? Racism. But they introduce him as, here is our head chef, Dick Halloran. And I was like, that's cool. But when Grady, the mouthpiece of the hotel, calls him the cook, which is clearly
such a good catch,
such a minor, such a subtle, like, yeah, this hotel is a really bad place for more than just the ghosts.
Also, because we passed it, and I'm sorry, I just want to mention we had the awesome scene with Danny riding his trike.
God, how did we skip that?
I know, with he's making turns and the layout is
impossible.
Can't happen. And the hotel, like you said earlier, Ben, is a character in this movie the way it is a character in the book. And we also get the scene where Danny sees the sisters again upstairs, and it's like flashing from them standing at the end of the hallway. Man, those girls stand just so terribly creepy. And it's cutting from that to them lying bloody, hacked up.
And just lingers on it just enough for you to get a detail the first time and then a different detail the second time, and then it's gone.
Is it weird that this entire sequence, I couldn't stop thinking of the cartoon Rocko's Modern Life?
I know exactly what you mean.
There's an episode of Rocko's Modern Life where Heifer, the cow, gets a job as a nighttime security guard, and then the rest of the episode is just The Shining spoof.
I haven't seen that one.
I've seen it, and it's amazing.
Well, I'm going to look it up and send it to you guys.
Please.
Okay, let's talk about Wendy waking up to Danny Tony.
Oh, God. That's, like I said, the Danny voice, the Tony voice is very creepy. And I don't know, all the things he said could not have been out of that kid's voice. They had to put like an effect on his voice for some of those. Because
when he starts yelling, Red Rum!
Well,
and it's
I couldn't tell if it was an effect or if it was just almost like they let it distort a little bit.
Maybe.
Because it kind of sounded like distortion, but in a purposeful way, not a like shitty audio way.
Yeah, but Wendy has locked Jack in the pantry, taken the butcher knife, and gone for a nap. I'd be exhausted after that too, to be honest.
She deserved a nap.
And Danny's been catatonic this whole time, so he gets up and walks over, takes the butcher knife away.
All while saying red rum.
Saying red rum over and over, grabs some red lipstick and writes it.
Oh, I thought he cut himself.
Oh my God.
No, I thought so too.
Jesus.
Because he picks up this big ass knife that Wendy has.
Facing him,
facing him and runs his thumb over the blade. And I was like,
he writes it in blood.
I didn't remember that this child writes red rum in blood.
That's what I thought too.
And no, he doesn't. He goes across the room and picks up lipstick and writes in lipstick on the door, red rum. In a really creepy way with the D and the R backwards in the middle, which that's cool. I wonder if they had to train the kid to write it specifically.
I thought about that too. I'm like, how many times did he have to practice that?
Yeah.
With lipstick. It's hard to write with lipstick. All right.
Jack's locked up.
Yeah, Jack is locked up. Oh, sorry. We got distracted talking about Brady.
What?
Grady. Whatever. I can't even. So we were talking about Grady. He is back, and he is on the other side of the pantry door, just poking Jack.
Titterlessly.
Titterlessly.
I need that on record.
No titters.
But, I mean, it's
pretty accurate.
It's pretty accurate.
He says, Wendy's kind of got one over on you. Maybe we should have, been dealing with her.
Right. And Jack's like, all right, kick me when I'm down. I get it. But I will get out here and I will fuck some shit up.
and we hear the latches being undone.
Mm-hmm.
I do wish if I could pull unimportant random bullshit from the book into this movie, what I would love is the scene when he comes out and on the counter are, a fifth of gin and like his drinks and his weapon are there.
Yeah, we only see him drink like 1 or 2 drinks, I think.
Yeah.
And yet we see him drunk a lot more. Because there's a fairly early scene, well before drinks have been introduced. We know that he's been sober for 5 months. There's a scene between him and Danny where you pointed out, Josh, it's like, oh, he's using a drunk voice. He has a slur already.
Something I found interesting, he is 5 months sober, but in the conversation earlier, he quit drinking 3 years ago when he broke Danny's arm.
Oh, shit.
Oh,
yeah.
So does that mean Wendy lied?
No,
or
I think
lied?
I think that means he's fallen off a few times, but professionally he said, like, in company, they would say he quit after that incident with Danny.
Yeah, I did not catch that.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Dang, you guys.
It jumped out to me because he mentions it during the tour when they're at the bar. And I was like, oh boy.
Jack is after his family. He is making his way upstairs and Wendy is hiding with Danny. They go into the bathroom, the murder room, the murder door, and she opens the window. And remember, they're on the 3rd floor. They're still on the 3rd floor. The snow is so high that he slides down this huge avalanche of snow to not really safety because we know how cold it is. And the scene of Wendy trying multiple times because she can't get it open all the way to squeeze through the opening and escape is very tense.
And the image of her hanging halfway out the window. She's like
and you
almost
you don't know
out,
where Jack is.
and you don't know. And she's like screaming down at Danny, just run.
Hide.
It's so intense.
I did, at this point, I'd always had the thing in the back of my head. I'd always had this thing in the back of my head about the axe versus the roque mallet. But now I feel like I've really come to terms on the side of the axe in this movie. Only because the reason being you won't hit anyone with an axe unless you're hitting them to kill them. Whereas like the roque mallet, the scenes are like he beats Wendy with that roque mallet pretty severely. And let's face it, if Kubrick was shooting that would not have gone safely. I feel like. So I feel like going with the sharp versus blunt played out for the drama here. And so I've laid that to rest on my petty gripes.
So we have the scene with Jack busting through the doors with the axe and saying, "Here's Johnny," the iconic line. But he gets interrupted because Dick comes on his snowcat.
Yeah. The same way in the book, hearing the motor sets, you check in kind of with everybody at the point of that motor.
And so Jack leaves to take care of that. And unfortunately, this is almost a Stephen King move, except we like this character so much. So I don't think we so much enjoy that. But Dick does not last long.
It's just to pump the body count.
I counted. He is in the hotel for less than a minute.
I was counting in my head also.
Yeah. For less than a minute, you hear him in the distance yelling and Jack slowly coming to the lobby. And then it cuts to Dick walking through this empty lobby and the music and everything. And you're just, every muscle in my body was tense because you just know Jack is going to pop out, which is exactly what he does. Steps out in like 2 big steps and buries the axe in Dick's chest.
Yeah, brutal.
It's just interesting the way it was shot because you see him coming at him, and normally it's kind of cut so that it seems like you don't get a good look at him doing it, and you see Dick freeze, and it makes so much sense that he froze.
I feel like as he's passing the pillars that he eventually jumps out. Yeah, every single one, you're like, now.
The lobby is so
when?
enormous, and there are so many hiding places.
I just want to touch base. How do we feel about that change of Dick dying?
This is why I felt like it was they used him as a red herring. Like the whole movie, we spend so much time with his journey across. You know, we see him in the plane, we see him talking on the phone with a friend to get the snowcat, and all of this, and you're like, oh, he's coming, something's gonna happen. And then less than a minute, he doesn't have a chance to do anything, which I guess is, the rug pull.
Yeah.
But I just wish there was a little bit more, Yeah.
It would have been nice to have a happy ending with the three of them. But
also that.
Yeah, I honestly can't really complain about much of anything in this, even if I like things from the book better. Okay, so let's just get through the rest of this. Wendy meets Roger. I just have to mention it. It's just...
What? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. I forgot the character's name.
She finds Dick's dead body. She's moving through the hotel in parts we haven't seen before and comes upon this room after she finds Dick is dead, and she's even more freaked out. And it's the scene with Roger giving Derwent a blowjob. And it just zooms in to them, and they're both kind of looking at her like, in or out, lady. We got stuff to do.
I noticed for the first time that the butt was cut out of his costume. That's what I noticed the first time.
Beautiful moment.
Yeah.
They seem like they care about each other more than they do in the book.
Yes, it was very romantic.
Yeah. Wendy goes up a bunch of stairs in this house
Forever.
in the overlook.
It is such a weird moment because it can't be the same building.
She walks to the 6th floor of this 3-floor building, pretty much.
It is crazy.
It's so cool.
And let's talk about basically the end of the movie with Danny running through the hedge maze for a very long time. But usually when I say something like that, it'd be forever.
Yeah.
No, it's perfect.
I think the ending is a little anticlimactic for me. Personally.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, because he's running through, and it's really, you're right, it's very, very long. It's the last 10 minutes of the movie of Danny just running and Jack following him and following the footprints. And you're like, oh, he can't get away. How do you hide?
Well, and you don't know where they are in relation to each other because you have no sense for the maze. So you don't know if they're running towards each other, even though he's following him and following his footprints.
And Danny finally stops, and it shows him walking backwards through his own footprints to try and get back far enough and then jump to the side so that he doesn't continue leading, which is brilliant, but also so scary because he does it so slowly.
Yes.
He does it so painfully slowly.
And you cut to
the
Jack.
whole time, Jack is running.
Well, he's limp running.
Well, limping because he limps from the point he falls down the stairs on. But it's so tense, but he hides, and Jack reaches the end of the footprints. Danny skirts him and runs off and gets out of the maze. Finally runs to Wendy. They get in the Tomcat and they drive off.
When Jack hears the engine of the Snowcat, it's my favorite thing. He the way he doesn't say words. He's letting out just these sounds.
This is the closest we have to in the book when Jack is gone.
Yeah.
This is arguably not Jack anymore because he is wailing
an animal
inhumanly.
Inhuman monsters. We get a few more, I don't even know how long, but just more of him running and howling after them. And right before that, and then as this is happening, the very minor change in how cold and worn out he looks was so effective because you can tell you're like, he's out there too long. It's just past survival.
He's also grabbing his chest.
Yeah, the whole time.
The whole time. So I was like, oh, is he having an episode,
And then he sits down and it holds on him for a moment, kind of like the silhouette of him. And then
a beautiful shot. Yeah.
Yes. And then hard cut, startling me. I didn't expect it. I knew it was coming, but I didn't remember that it was just no fanfare, just boom. It is right in front of him, close up on we have frozen Jack Torrance. Which Ben, you don't like.
Something.
Yeah.
I have always found that cut hilarious.
It is funny.
It is the look on frozen Jack Torrance's face. He's making just a dumb face.
I think it's also funnier because we live in an age where we've seen that still photo for years. So we've had plenty of time to dissect that stupid look.
I bet it would have been scary.
I bet the first time you
see it. If I had seen this movie before, it would be really scary. Sorry. And then that's not quite it. We cut to a very hotly debated and discussed image of a picture hanging up on the wall inside of the Overlook, and it is of the masquerade in 1921, and Jack is featured front and center in his tuxedo.
Sure, whatever.
Yeah. I think it's a fan moment. I think he was just showing like, yeah, Grady, we've had this conversation about you've always been the caretaker. I think it was just a way to show that visually that leaves people
I love an ambiguous ending,
I do
especially
too, really.
in a horror movie.
Yeah.
Now that this movie's over, can I blaspheme for a second?
Get it, girl.
I want a The Shining remake. I want a new The Shining. Not a remake. That's incorrect. I want a new adaptation of The Shining.
Okay.
Specifically done by either Ari Aster or David Eggers.
What movies are you?
Ari Aster wrote and directed, I believe, Hereditary and Midsommar.
I haven't seen that either.
Oh, fuck.
And David Eggers has made 3, what I would argue, nearly perfect movies that I'm definitely going to be able to name right now. The Witch.
Yeah.
The Lighthouse, and The Northman.
Oh, I haven't watched The Northman yet for some reason.
So both of these directors have this quality of making everything so surreal and dreamlike, which obviously is my favorite thing in the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that either one of them could turn out an absolute masterpiece of The Shining. Without a doubt in my mind. I would pay any amount of money to see David Egger or Ari Aster's The Shining. Please, Hollywood, please.
Get at us on Twitter, guys, directors. Let's make this happen.
Okay, let's rate this. I am going to do you both a favor and go first.
Yeah.
Because I feel almost like I've been a listener in some of the Shining episodes, not in a bad way. It's just I know where I stand on it, and watching you two talk about it, and Josh, I'm gauging where you land, so I'm really curious. So I want to save the best for last, you two. 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts. This movie fucking rules. If you don't like it because it doesn't follow the book, I get it, and that's okay. And I'm glad that Josh, you're kind of in that same boat, and you were able to make all of the really excellent points. Many of our listeners, I'm sure, share and feel very, very strongly about. So if you don't give it 5 listeners, that's cool. I just love it, and it's great and fun, and that's my rating.
I hate it. It's a masterpiece. 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts. I could ramble on about it, but no, like I still hate the things that I hated about it before, but watching it so fresh after reading it and having this discussion, just like anything else, there are so many movies that you discover so much the more you watch. We could watch this movie 100 times and still find something new. I bet it's a masterpiece. There's no two ways about it.
Ben?
I am going to have maybe a controversial take. The movie taken on its own with it just what is on the screen. Obviously a 5 out of 5. It is one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. It's insane to me that I watched this at a point in my life and was like, nah, not for me. That's crazy. However, I have to say, when I say watching the scenes of Shelley Duvall in distress is incredibly difficult, I mean that very much. All of those scenes, as moving and powerful as those performances are, the methods and knowing that this movie basically destroyed a human life, it affects my rating.
It taints your
this is the really hard part, because how do you put a number on that? And you can't, obviously. So I cannot give this movie a 5 out of 5 because it just feels wrong for me. Obviously, if you did, it's not a problem. It is a nearly perfect movie.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect.
But I think I have to give this 4 out of 5 blue chambray shirts with an asterisk.
Fair enough.
That's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode where we are starting Insomnia.
Fuck.
And we are reading through chapter 6. For Benjamin Graham and Sam Alexander, I'm Joshua Kahn reminding you, God, I'd give anything for a drink. I'd give my goddamn soul for just a glass of beer.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to The Shining Part 4. We hope you enjoyed it. Many of you have asked us to cover the miniseries as well, and we are doing that. You'll be able to find those episodes on our Patreon page, and the first one will come out at the end of the month as of this episode's release date. So please check that out. If you are not currently a patron, you can have access to all of that at the $5 and up tier. We have a ton of bonus episodes to keep you occupied between releases, and we're always adding fun and new formats to what we do there. There's a bit that didn't make the final cut of this episode that I'll share with you at the end of this, but first, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Derry Public Radio and Twitter at Derry Public. You can also send us an email at derrypublicradio@gmail.com and check out our Etsy store for Derry and Stephen King related merchandise. I hope you enjoy this next bit. I did it when I was 3 years old. Over my entire body. I used up my mom's whole tube of red lipstick to paint myself, face and everything, head to toe. There's a picture of me completely red lipsticked in a diaper.
That's hilarious.
She was so mad.
That's so much better.
Picture.
Holy shit, that's great.
My only experience drawing with lipstick was in high school theater. We had to draw the naked lady every show.
What?
Is that not a universal experience?
Not one I've heard of.
So in my high school, the theater, we had a lot of just very strange traditions that
theaters
had.
do. Yeah.
And downstairs, our dressing rooms were under the stage. This can all get cut out. This is not important at all. But under the stage was where the dressing rooms were. And on one side was the girls' dressing room, and on the other side was the boys' dressing room. And the boys, every show, there was a tradition that on opening night, one of the cast members would go to the full-length mirror and steal a lipstick from the girls' dressing room and use the lipstick to draw a full-length mirror size naked lady on the mirror.
That's amazing.
And these were high school boys, so they were not well drawn or particularly accurate to any kind of real female anatomy.
We can make this happen. I have a mirror right there.
Hey, give me some lipstick. Let's go.
That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.